Good evening, everyone. It is another episode of EU Masters Esports with Emrick. I'm, of course, your host. We are in the tail end of everything here. We are into the quarterfinals, out of the group stages, no more play-ins. We are here to get to the bottom of who the best team is. There's a couple more slates, a couple more betting angles, so we're just going to go through it right now. We're going to talk about some of the options that we have, what I see, and kind of just some different strategies going into, these final 2-game slates. I don't know if they're going to break it into 2 slates or if we're going to get 3. So far in the lobby right now for DraftKings, we do have the Movie Star Riders, Fnatic, and then big PDW. I'm not sure if they're going to take that big PDW and go to KCU Cam as well, or just do a KCU Cam Misfits Giants kind of slate. We are on the weekend. Slates are reduced. It is a 2-game slate, and we've got football starting tomorrow. So there's a very good chance that these contests do not look so fantastic. Right now it's 2K to first in the main GPP. So we got to look at some other options if we want to get a little bit of action on these games. So, first and foremost, let's go into kind of what has happened and how we got where we're at right now. And so let me bring this up right here. First and foremost, you had Misfits and UCAM get out of Group A. That was not my expectation. I did think Rogue was going to pull this out. They were unable to do that, even though, despite the fact that they were able to beat UCAM in that final game on the final day. Well, it wasn't the final game. It was the final game between those two on that day, but they just were not able to get it done against Misfits. They lost against Anthosis, and that kind of, cemented where they were not making it out of that group. The next group was Group B. This one was one of the more clear-cut, chalky groups. Tricked was able to pull off one win against, so actually both of their wins came against Penta. Penta was not able to win. And then Movie Star and PDW traded games against each other. And then finally Movie Star beat them in a thrilling kind of tiebreaker that gave them, or actually what ended up giving them the number 1 overall seed, as Misfits were unable to remain undefeated in their group. Big and Fnatic made it out. Illuminar played really well. Fnatic just played a little bit better and was able to edge it out just ever so slightly. Zero Tenacity did put up a decent fight in the last day of group games, but just weren't able to notch any wins in the win column. And then finally, the Giants were able to get out of Group D above and beyond Mouse Sports. And, of course, tournament favorite Carmine Corp was able to go 5-1, dropping 1 game to the Giants. Really strong indication of strength here for the Super League, who was able to put 3 representatives into this tournament. One had to go through the play-in stage, but they've all made it out of group stages. You've got 2 teams making it out of the LFL. You got the 1 team from the NLC, and then, of course, we've got the Ultra Liga PDW champion who was able to make it out in impressively. So as we take a look at these, we do have some betting odds for each one of these best-of-5 series. The first game that is tomorrow at noon is going to be Movie Star Riders and Fnatic. So despite the odds here, this is one at plus 300, especially when we're looking at the context of the other ones, that I think Fnatic have somewhat of a shot of beating Movie Star Riders. They have been a team that, has been relatively dominant in the best of ones, but they did falter in the playoffs. They have had problems closing out games, and I can see a Fnatic team that I don't think is too far away from them from a talent perspective, but still a significant margin. I can see a Fnatic team going ahead and upsetting them. It's harder in a best of 5. Typically, the more games you get, the better team is going to win, just as a result of the more games needed to win, and it's harder to get those fluky wins that you see in a best of 1 because you need 3 of them. But at plus 300, it might be something that you take a shot at Fnatic. We'll look at the stats for this in a second. I'm still picking Movie Star here. This isn't the spot that I'm kind of planting my flag and thinking that there's going to be an upset. I think that's going to come more right here. Big did disappoint last EU Masters in the spring. They had a relatively dominant spring, as they did in summer, made it through their group similarly dominant, and were unable to get past this, quarterfinal stage. PDW has looked fantastic. Even their games where they lost to Movie Star Riders, they, were in it, the majority of the time. The first game, not so much, but obviously the second game they played very well and won. And then the third game was by the slimmest of margins that they lost. So a plus 280 is a spot that I'm, super interested in. The plus 1.5 to get plus 130, I'm super interested in. I like PDW to get out of, the quarterfinals and move into the semifinals. And, part of that does also come from the weakness that we have seen from the Prime League representatives, and Big being the last of those, and obviously that cream of that crop. But a lot of the impressive wins that they had, or when you look at their resume, it becomes less impressive as these teams have faltered when playing cross-regionally, and Big themselves faltered in the quarterfinals in the spring. So they're a big favorite here, but one of the smaller favorites on the slate. So, the next one is going to be Carmine Corp against UCAM. When we look at the statistics, UCAM was able to pull out some really nice wins, including that opening game, well, not opening game, but the opening game of the second round robin stage for their group to knock off Misfits. But then they ended up faltering to Rogue and almost missed getting into this part. They're really kind of the hardest team to figure out. At their best, this is definitely a team that can compete with anybody on this stage, but they just haven't been able to play their best or be consistent throughout the entire split, throughout this. And I think that when you get into a best of 5 against one of the better teams, Carmine, it's just a really tall task for any of these teams in this tournament to climb. Vitality B, which was the third-ranked team in the LFL, had a 2-1 lead in the overall season LFL finals, but were unable to close that out, and Carmine came back and won 2 more. So, expecting this UCAM team to be one that's going to best this team in a best of 5 is just it's hard for me to see that. I'm picking Carmine Corp to go ahead and beat them and move on to the next round. Finally, the other game that I think has some level of upset viability here is going to be the Giants over Misfits. Misfits have looked like one of the better teams in this tournament, but the Giants do have on their side experience within this tournament, both in the top lane and in their ADC position. And more than anything, this is also a team that knows what their identity is and plays to it. We saw that when they got Antonio off of a tank in the top lane and made him play Kennen, they just didn't look as good. Since then, he's played Sion, he's played Ornn, and those are the two things that he's played. They're going to play their game, and they are going to use Attila as the carry. So they know their identity. They were able to go through the playoffs, and I think that this is a spot, and the odds would tell you the same thing, that there's a very real possibility that they upset Misfits here. Probably going to take them plus 1.5. I think Misfits still have a pretty, commanding shot of winning this series, but nevertheless, let's go ahead and let's just assume that the Giants win that. For DFS purposes, it's a little bit of a different situation. You can play almost anything that you want on the upcoming slate when it comes to the Movie Star Riders and then Big. The exception is you can't. Well, I guess you can't say you can't play anything that you want. Favorite MRS and Big. You can play a mid captain from Big, but it is a 3-4. You can play either of them 4-3 with jungle captains, and you can't play ADC either way. But, you throw in one of those dogs, PDW, Fnatic, and, you can play just about anything that you want. My guess is a lot of the ownership is going to end up going over to Big. A lot of the ownership is going to go over to Movie Star Riders. So I would want to build lineups that kind of have one of the dogs in there, whether it's PDW, whether it's Fnatic, and then pair it with the other favorite. Or if you just want to get, really crazy, go ahead and do a PDW Fnatic kind of lineup. I think that we stick to the same guns in the most part and continue to captain mids, continue to captain jungles and kind of stay away from the ADC position as our captain. Now, there are exceptions to that. I think you can definitely captain Fnatic's Bean, as he has been one of the biggest contributors and carries to that team. And of course, Attila from the Giants are going to be guys that we can look at that. As we kind of just look at these statistics from the teams, it's something that we'll see. When it comes to big, Melanik and a lot of the top laners have been similar to this, just almost non-existent in the kill participation. 48.9% is super, super low. But as you can see, kill share, the jungler at 32.8, Kidu at 29. So it's pretty incredible where some of these statistics, albeit on a rather small scale, are at. So again, Akabane is a great player to captain being a jungle. You can definitely go with a Kidu, especially if you're going to, come down here and take a look at Fnatic. Your kill participation, Bean is almost up there at the top. Of all the carries, he absolutely is at the top. And then additionally, a decent kill share, nothing fantastic. Maxi has overwhelmingly had that for the team. Again, so you can definitely go ahead and captain Maxi if you want to go ahead and have Akabane with it, but you can go the route of having a Bean captain or a Kidu captain and then just picking the one of the two of these guys that you want in those builds, or you can go through several builds. Now, as we kind of move along, one of the matchups that we talked about and we're going to look at, because I'm not going to do a video for every single one of these, but the UCAM KC, Cabashard has been super popular in terms of ownership, and rightfully so. When we look at this, he is not one of the top laners who has dropped off in their kill participation. 62.9, one of the higher ones on the team. In fact, higher than the jungle, being kind of the exception there. Sancroft has not produced very well from a fantasy perspective, comparatively to the other jungles within this tournament. But like I said, Cabashard has been the complete opposite. He has been a fantastic carry for this team, 31.9% kill share on top of that 62.9 kill participation. Him and Staken and even Xmatty to some extent, despite a lower kill participation, does have a high kill share, are all kind of playable. This is kind of, when the Carmine slate comes up, this is kind of your first guy out is Syncroft, or maybe he's your first guy in. Maybe we take a look at this as kind of the outlier in terms of the results, and it's going to regress to the mean. That might be a way to play Carmine and still have a kind of an ownership leverage, because they're going to be popular on the slate that they're on, whether it's two of them or one of them. But he's going to be kind of the first person that people are going to exclude. And so as such, if you make him your captain and he has a fantastic game, you're going to get that a little bit lower ownership. But don't kid yourself, on a 2-game slate, you're going to have massive ownership anyway. Excuse me. So going into kind of the misfits and just looking at this, again, top lane, Aggressivo, 50% kill participation, 19% kill share. But, the rest of the team has been there for all the kills. Jack Troll at 74%, basically, Sertu, Schlatten, and Woolite all, in that mid-60s and sharing kind of the kill share, with Woolite actually pulling just slightly ahead of Schlatten. And then Sertus has just been, he's had some pop-off games, and, you can put him in the captain slot, and it's going to be a popular place for him to kind of reside, but he's kind of fallen off after a couple early massive performances, and that's really been carried by Schlatten as the kind of primary carrier, lead point getter. So that's them. And then when we go into these other two teams, Movie Star Riders, just to take a look here, no surprise, Max Lore leads the team with a 72.7 kill participation. Kenzuke at 71%. Pretty equal kill shares amongst this team. Nothing necessarily stands out more so than the kind of marquee 57.8. But again, it's actually pretty high when we've looked at the way that the games have been played and the involvement that we've seen from top laners in this tournament. And then going over here, no surprise, this team has been a team that kind of fights together and really is carried by the bottom half of the team. Bruness has, decent kill participation at 67.5. Color's actually pretty high at 59.8 and a 17.9. Again, contextually thinking about the top laners within the tournament, but, the carries, the mid, the ADC, Odie and Cjac have just been, massively important to their victories. And so, looking through this, I guess, depending on the teams, you could make a case that a lot of these ADCs have been involved in a lot of kills, have been taking a lot of the kill share, and you can definitely captain them, especially if we were trying to kind of zag away from everybody else zigging, with people going towards that jungle captain, that mid captain that was so strong the first half of this tournament and has kind of veered away a little bit. So you can pick your spots in those type of situations. Going into kind of just looking at some of the statistics for these teams, early game, teams that have been the strongest have been Big, Movistar, Misfits, EUM. No surprise there, been super, super weak. And you can see that their goal difference at 15 has been, the worst out of these remaining teams, followed by Vodafone. But, when we look at this, the Giants and EUM both not looking so hot right there. PDW has, some work, but at 766, they're kind of trailing behind everybody else. The one that's kind of surprising is, despite the fact that they've been 5-1, is Carmine Corp, a little bit behind the ball here at 5-1 at 1581 goal difference at 15, which would be something that's concerning for me if they weren't playing UCAM, who was at minus 1145. So just kind of taking a look into these games and just the comparisons. We have Big playing PDW, so let's just drop everybody out of this. Between these two teams, Big has the edge in the early game, PDW the edge in the late game. Big has been phenomenal at getting out to big leads, getting their goal difference at 15 to be huge. First blood percentages have been pretty equal. My biggest concern would be that first tower percentage, where Big has excelled 83% of the time versus PDW at 57. I think that is kind of an indicator that we could have arrived at this 60 versus 75 number. Herald percentage, pretty even. First Dragon, Big has gotten it every single time versus PDW at 43. If that's an option that your book offers, probably would jump at that, depending on what the odds they're giving you. And then first Baron and just Baron control has been in Big's favor. So take that for what it's worth. I guess my overall concern from PDW and some of these numbers, despite the fact that they've looked good, they did get to play Penta 2 times. They did get to play Tricked 2 times. But that being said, they had to play Movistar 3 times. So, you're looking at a 50-50 from that, and getting that third game against Movistar can certainly have an impact on this gold 15, can have an impact on some of these other ratings. I still like PDW as a team that could pull off this upset and kind of shock Big. It's not like Big's competition with Illuminar, Zero Tenacity, and Fnatic was anything like a group of death that we need to weigh their statistics stronger than we do with PDWs. So going into the next matchup would be Fnatic and Movistar. Now, keep in mind, these teams played each other 3 times in the play-ins. Movistar beat them 2 times. Fnatic was able to take 1 game. It was the more meaningless of the games. Movistar beat them the first time, and then in the second playthrough, where each team played each other on the same day, that was when Fnatic was able to get a win and then lost the tiebreaker later. So what we've seen from Fnatic is actually a pretty strong representation of their early game within this tournament, but Movistar has been a little bit better. Pretty equal in terms of gold difference at the 15, but Fnatic has just fallen apart in their games in the mid to late game. It's a place where Movistar, while they have not excelled necessarily, they have been a team that has closed some things out. And again, I mean, I think both of these groups were pretty equal in terms of competition. Neither of these teams likes to get the first blood, as you can see, 33 and 29. First tower, though, does go into Movistar's favor. Herald pretty equal. First Dragon, huge lead for Movistar there. Again, if your book offers that, that's something that you can go ahead and take advantage of. And then first Baron, Baron control, pretty equal. So, looking at these numbers versus the numbers for Big and PDW not as big of a dog as Fnatic. I think a lot of the numbers that we just looked at would tell you that Fnatic's a lot closer to Movistar than PDW was to Big. But that's just from a statistical standpoint. The eye test for me, the way that they played the game, and I don't think that they played every game in the same type of style where some of these teams, I feel like they are. I think PDW adapted to the other team, played some high kill games, played some fast paced games, and then played some kind of slower paced games as well. I think they ended up with one of the higher timings. 34.39. So they're very comfortable going into that. Whereas, Fnatic was down, or Big had the shortest duration in terms of games. So, take that for what it's worth. Let's go into Carmine and EUM. No surprise here. Statistics are heavily in Carmine's favor, even in the mid to late game where EUM has kind of excelled, despite being a terrible early game team, not being able to get out to big leads. They've really excelled later in the games, team fighting, getting themselves into the right positions, and getting into some of those later objectives. But Carmine's been just as good, if not better. And so that's really kind of one of the things that just really isn't going in their favor, where, you could probably have played a lot of these teams and had a significant advantage in the late game and the way that you play the late game, the way that you play together. But when you play against Carmine, and the esports plug pointed this out, this was the one matchup that he felt like they probably can't win. And I'm going to have to agree with him. Carmine is just, they're going to win this game. They're going to move past it. The first blood percentage at 50 versus 33, first tower 67-17. This EUM team can't do anything early. When it gets down to getting those advantages late, they're very good at getting the first Baron. They're very good at their Baron control percentage. The thing is, Carmine's just as good, if not better, in both of those categories. So this might even be a game where you can probably take Carmine -1.5 if you wanted to, or even get in here. And if you think EUM can take one game, maybe get the +180, take Carmine 3-1. I can't see this going 3-2, and I certainly don't see any of these odds playing out. So that's where we're at with that one. Next up, we've got Misfits versus the Giants. So Misfits are a better early game team, as you can see by their early game rating, but the mid to late game seems pretty equal. The big thing for the Giants to be able to win some of these games is going to be able to kind of limit that goal difference at 15, so they can get through this early part of the game, maybe be able to take a first tower, which they've been rather unsuccessful at. Getting the first blood is all well and good, but getting the first tower is pretty much an indication that you probably got the Herald, you have the pressure early, and you're dictating the way that game is being played. It gives you control over so many other places. The thing that you kind of want to see when a team is not successful at getting that first Herald, they're not successful at getting the first tower, is that they have some type of dragon control or first dragon control, and the Giants do. So that's kind of a saving grace, because it is a win condition for them to, advance their way and scale into Soul. The problem is that they're just really bad at getting into that first Baron and just their overall Baron percentage. Lucky for them, overall, Misfits have not been too good at their control of the Baron, although they have been much better at getting that first one. This is going to kind of come down to what I think about this, I mean, how did the Giants win this game? I think they kind of just scale up and they have to let Attila take over the game, whether he's on Aphelios, whether he's on Ezreal. We need to see Mini Duke play kind of that accessory role, kind of that support mid, whether it's on Silas, whether it's on Twisted Fate, whether it's even on the Seraphine. These are ways that they were able to, get victories in the other ones. And certainly I think that obviously keeping the Antonio on a tank mid laner is likely the way to go. If I'm Misfits, depending on side selection, given Woolite's champion pool, I think that you're probably banning maybe Aphelios or the Thresh or something like that, and really kind of targeting Attila. I don't think you can target like the Antonio because, you could ban out Cyan and Ornn. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to do that. You'd be giving away so many power picks. But there's enough champions that are of the same, classification, caliber, skill set as kind of Ornn and Cyan. And, he could go to one of those, whether it's like a Mundo, a Tom Kench, there are plenty of different options for him. So that's kind of the way that we have it here. So my hope is that the Giants, at least in picking them, are able to kind of just play to their win conditions, scale up with the Dragons, maybe limit any type of early game deficit that they get themselves into, or ideally be in the lead, and it just play the team fights kind of flawlessly the way that they had in some of those games where they just kind of knew what their roles were, executed it well, and hopefully Misfits come and falter. They've shown an inability to show up in these type of moments, with the exception of being the summer split playoffs where they won. So I'm still going to back the Giants here. I feel like they've made a tremendous run, and why is it going to stop right now? And there would be no fun in picking the two favorites to get into the semifinals. So last matchup that we have to talk about will be, I'm even drawing a blank. Actually, I think we went all over them all, didn't we? Yeah, okay. So that's where we're at. So this is almost the second to last installation of this series. I will join you guys again next week to kind of talk about the semifinals going into the finals. But predictions are K-Corp, PDW, Movie Star Riders, and Giants getting into these semifinals. So in terms of ownership, obviously the favorites are going to be there. I think every one of these underdogs is live. The only one that I don't think stands a chance, and I probably won't play a lot, big surprise, it's going to be UCAN. Other than that, enjoy the games, enjoy NFL Week 1 if that's your thing. And, as always, this is brought to you by the esportsdepartment.com. All the content over there is free, projections, everything you could want for CSGO, Valorant when it's being played. There's a big Dota tournament that's coming up that, there are contests in the lobby. There'll be some content for that, as well as Worlds content coming up for LOL. Again, if any of this helps you win some money, feel free, please donate. Help the cause, help everybody that creates all of that content, does everything to put it out there, the projections, everything, and join us in the Discord over at esportsdepartment.com. And then additionally, you can find me in DFS content as well, LOL, esports, football, everything over at drroto.com. Lots of premium tools, optimizer, cheat sheets, everything you could need for this NFL season coming up. And other than that, guys, have a great night, and let's try and get some green screens.